here. So I want to welcome everyone to the Legends of Sierra Online. I'm just kind of curious, how many people is this your first time at the Portland Retro Gaming Expo? That's awesome, right? Second time. I've been here a couple times as well, so yes. So for today, we have a bunch of awesome people who have made great games at Sierra Online. More than you probably realize, some classics and some deep cuts as well. So I want to start this. My name is Jason. I have a YouTube channel called Metal Jesus Rocks, and I feel like I've kind of been one of those people carrying the torch of Sierra all these decades later. I used to work there in the mid-90s, and it was a fantastic time. Met my wife there, and also Drunken Master Paul up here, and all of our friends that we've had for decades now. I'm going to introduce I want these guys to introduce themselves, talk about a couple of the Sierra games that they worked on, and also maybe one of your first Sierra memories, because you guys some of you were there at the very beginning. So, let's start with Josh.
My name is Josh Mandel, and I worked on altogether about 24 games at Sierra, including Larry 1 VGA, and Larry Utilities, and Larry 5, and Larry 6, and Rick Marcus, and Dagger Around the Rock, and Jones in the Fast Lane, and BQ1, and...
Jones in the Fast Lane. I mean, do people remember that game?
Yeah.
I know, I told him Jim.
I tested it originally for Sierra and said, yeah, this is good enough to do it. So a third party brought it to us.
Oh, really?
As far as I know, that was the only game that Sierra ever published that was submitted by someone else. And it was already in a finished form, but we couldn't release that.
I like the original personally.
Yeah, that's right. And my first memory of Sierra is actually waiting for Space Quest 3 to come out. I was in a Chicago ad agency at the time, and I was beta testing for Sierra, but I hadn't beta tested Space Quest 3, and I used to go to Babbage's and Software, etc. Every single day after work, is it in yet? Is it in yet? Is it in yet? And they got so tired of seeing me. And then it came out, and it's my favorite Sierra game. I thought it was absolutely perfect.
My name is Lowe, and I was Sierra employee number 20. About 6 months later, there were 120 employees. That's what you call fast growth. And then one Friday afternoon, Ken called all of us in and said, we're going to fire 80 of you. And Sierra went from 120 to 40 very quickly. But he gave the programmers an option. He said, you can receive advances instead of royalties, or instead of salary. We'll give you some advances and you can go home and write games. And I did that, and so did Bob Hoffman and Chris Iden. And the other 20 employees went home and smoked dope or cut wood, or I don't know, or soap operas. But 3 of us came back with games, and that was kind of my start. So I started right before the first Black Friday, and then lasted for 16 years. I got fired along with everybody else that day, but I was, from the next 15 years, an outside contractor with a strange relationship. Like, I had employees for Sierra working under me, and I was responsible for them, and yet I didn't work there. I was an outsider. So that, and I did those games that he mentioned.
Siebert, I was music director for. They got me a pin here, so I'm good. I was just going to be the masked singer, but now. So I was music director at Sierra for many years, and so touched just about everything when I was going there for a while. And then became a producer, and I produced games for Roberta. We did Seven, and Gloria, and then I got to produce for Al, and we did Torrance Passage, and thank both of you for buying that game. Really appreciate it. And then we did Larry 7, and that was Larry 7 was just a hoot. It was every day come in, let's make a new joke. It's gonna be fun. So,
Who here remembers Where's Dildo? That was a thing. That was a thing.
Mark had a wonderful technique on, he would schedule team meetings on Friday afternoon at 4 o'clock. Yeah, and nobody wanted to move around and spend a long time, right? Everybody was ready to go home. And so the rule was at the meeting that you could say anything if it got a laugh. And if you didn't get a laugh, well, then you were in trouble. But one of the animators was one of the artists was sketching some stuff, and he sketched out a Waldo-looking dildo, and people everywhere started laughing, and they showed it around and stuff. And so the programmers saw that, and they said, "We could do that. We could put that in." And it was one of the most fun things we ever did. It just came up in the middle of a meeting on a Friday afternoon at 5.
Every game needs a Where's Dildo, right? Call of Duty, whatever. And then Lori.
Okay, I'm Lori Cole.
Oh, I'm Corey Cole.
We did the quest for glory, Hero's Quest in Sierra. With Castle of Dr. Brain.
That's a
And then more recently, we've done Who Are You? Road to Redemption. Sydney and Josh and various other goatee parties. Now.
Closer to the mic.
Oh, closer to the mic, sorry. Okay, so more recently we did Who Are You? Road to Redemption, which is a 70% role-playing, 30% adventure, whereas Quest of Glory was 30% role-playing, 70% adventure. And then we're doing a series called Summer Days now that are interactive, narrative adventures, so interactive novels.
So we're still working at this.
So we're still doing this very, very slow as we toddle along in our walker.
Your first memory?
My first memory. Well, actually, I think one of the first people I met was Stuart Goldstein, was his name? And Mark Seabird in the music room. And Stuart was the genius engineer behind music systems. Of course, Alex was yeah, my first job at Sierra was converting all of the games to the Atari ST. So I was a low-level systems programmer, and then eventually, after about a year of that, they let me make a game.
Yeah, as opposed to me, who was a school teacher coming in with no prior experience for gaming, and I don't program. And yet I came in and I proposed a game. What do you know? They let me do Hero's Quest, and I didn't just propose a game, I proposed a series. And I think it was the idea that actually, that, you know, I knew what I was doing when I was writing stories that they let me do it. But my first memory of Sierra was Corey coming back saying, oh, I've got a computer, they're going to hire me as a computer programmer, and they're going to pay me this much salary. And I said, are you kidding? We can't live on that much salary.
She was in tears, and I went back and said, sorry, we can't do that, and they immediately upped the offer, but not by very much, so. Somehow we scraped along.
That's my first memory.
Underpaid, overworked.
It was my 1/3 pay cut from my previous job.
My first memory of Sierra was I had written 2 games, an adventure game and an arcade game, that were educational products for children, and we did it at home. Myself, we copied our discs on my neighbor's pool table, and we got a little folder, and we found the Bradley plastic bag company that sent us little Ziploc baggies that would hold the stuff, and we made our own punched holes in the Ziploc bag, and we were Ziploc bag programmers. And we went to the last Apple Fest, which was in 1982, in Brooks Hall in San Francisco, and set up our little 10 by 10 booth in this corner where it didn't cost a lot of money. Although it was a month's salary, now that I think about it, for a couple of school teachers. Anyway, we set up our little booth, and down the aisle came walking Ken and Roberta. And Ken, as always, was leading, and Roberta was trailing. And he got up to our table, and he said, well, hey, Roberta, look at this. These games look just like your games. And that, to me, was the highest praise I had ever received, because they were the state of the art at that time. And so that's my first memory. And from that day on, he told me to come by the booth tomorrow morning, and I'll give you all the products we have. You can have any game you want, or all of them. And wow, that's great. So the next morning, before the show opened, I went over to the Sierra booth and said, is Ken here? And they said, no, his house burned down last night. Yeah. His son found his Playboys, and instead of reading them with a flashlight, he got a candle under the covers, and don't tell anybody that story.
Such a perfect tale.
That's hilarious. So,
It was too hot.
I want to open this up to your questions. So, this is the first time that these guys have been to this expo. So, I want to throw the microphone. Mr. Drunk Mr. Paul is right here with the roaming microphone. If you have some questions for the
It's always dangerous when they give me a microphone, so I'm going to try to be good.
Yeah.
So just raise your hand if you have a question. I'm just kind of work my way around the room, front to back. This gentleman has his hand up first. What do you got?
Hey guys, I'm actually from Eugene, just a couple hours south, so I'm curious if any of you guys work with the Dynamix team that used to be down there. Yeah, that's it.
I mean, I'm not sure about these guys, but definitely in tech support and Q&A department, we absolutely did. But like you said, we lived up in Seattle and they were down in Eugene, Oregon, so I don't think I really met any of them, although I did end up doing some testing on games like Earth Siege and things like that. In my opinion, they made some of our Sierra's best published games. I love their stuff, because it wasn't necessarily just adventure games, although they dabbled in that with a little bit, Rise of the Dragon and stuff like that, but A10, all the simulator games and all that sort of stuff is really cool. It came out of Dynamix, so Flight Sims, arcade games. They also published, I believe, The Incredible Machine, right? Yeah, which is, even today.
I worked with Denzel Long, who worked on Adventures of Willie Beamish, and he and I, that was the year they pulled me off all the Quest of Glory games and said, okay, recreate the magic you did in Atari ST, except this time Sega Genesis CD. And they brought down Denzel from Dynamix to work with me on it. And the first thing I did, being a straight system programmer, is I put in a check at the beginning of the program that says, warn me anytime memory starts to get low. And apparently the first thing Denzel did was to take that out. So after he'd been working at 3 months, we kept getting random crashes. I finally went through the code and discovered that line was commented out. I put it back in and found out that we couldn't get SCI to run. It didn't have enough memory. But yeah, that was my little experience. But yeah, their games were amazing.
Yeah, and King's Quest 8, of course, was running on the Dynamix 3D engine, which we ended up taking and finishing it out for King's Quest. So it was kind of a branching of the code at that time. So I think that was our experience with that.
I had the Willie Beamish CD for the Sega, and I thought it had the distinction of being the only game that I've ever played where there was a separate game that you could play while the next scene was loading.
There's a lot. Yeah.
That's
Yeah. When I first got to Sierra, I was a producer, not a designer, and one of the tasks I was given was to be creative liaison to Dynamix, which the company had just bought. So I went to Eugene and I met Jeff Tennell, who loved me because in an earlier life, when I'd been a game journalist, I had reviewed his game, David Wolf's Secret Agent, which was a marvelous, marvelous game, and I gave it really a tremendous write-up, and I guess I was one of the few who had done that. So he was very grateful, and they were working on Hard China at the time. And I observed to them that the puzzles were all, find this, give this to someone else. Find this, give this to someone else. And I said, you could do more. And I designed the puzzle where you put the wagon together and the chopsticks and the coins and everything like that. And I said, see, you can combine inventory objects and make more interesting puzzles that way. But they were wonderful, and there was a guy named Jerry Luttrell who was in their marketing, and he was wonderful. He's sadly gone now, but he was a wonderful guy, and Dynamix really did some amazing things.
The dirty not so secret is that Lowe and I went to work for an adventure game company making a good adventure game, and we don't actually play adventure games. We're long-time role-playing game people, and Betrayal of Condor was the wonderful RPG that Dynamix made, and our relationship to that is that we both read great advice to
Okay, who's next? Just raise your hands again. Get back to you. I'm standing next to this person. Yeah, I didn't want to leave you. I just walked past.
So there are a bunch of iconic soundtracks across various Sierra games over the years. I would like you guys to talk about which ones are your favorite, or which ones are the hardest to work on, or anything unique about any of them that you think everybody would enjoy hearing.
I mean,
Looking at you, Mark.
I mean, Al is a musician, so did you write the music for Little Larry King?
I was driving home and listening to NPR, and they had a story about Irving Berlin's birthday. And they played some of his music, and I thought, well, that's a goofy old sounding stuff. Larry's a goofy kind of character. Maybe he should have a goofy theme song. Because at the time, everything was kind of techno rock and stuff. And I thought, that would fit Larry. Larry should be different. So I got home and I said to my wife, how long before dinner? She said, about 20 minutes. So I sat down and wrote the Larry theme song. In time for dinner. Not ever thinking that anyone would ever hear it a year later. Because at that time, the game cycles were pretty short. And music was so minuscule in games in the mid-'80s that I think Larry had maybe 5 songs, 6 songs in it. I mean, it wasn't much. And they were all brief little snippets and stuff. So that was, I guess, my claim to fame is that I wrote a song in 20 minutes that people are playing and still singing 30, 40 years, what, 35 years? Yeah, so that's, that was it.
So Mark, did you do the Rose Quest theme song in 20 minutes?
Well, no, I have an interesting story about that. I was in Belize maybe 6-8 years ago, just on a little missions trip, and we were helping a school rebuild some of the buildings and stuff. And we were introducing ourselves, and I said to the person running the project, I said, "Hi, I'm Mark Siebert," and they said, I know a Mark Siebert that used to write video game music, and I said, "No, you're kidding." And they said, "No, I'm serious." I said, "Well, yeah, that's me." They said, "No, that's not you." And I said, "Yeah," and they said, "Well, what'd you work on?" I said, "Well, I worked on Quest for Glory was one of the games," and the person starts singing the Quest for Glory theme, and that just made my day, and maybe my life. It was a wonderful thing. So yes. That's awesome.
Yeah, we got a hotshot musician, Chris Brayman, from Hollywood, doing Quest for Glory 5, but it's amazing.
Quest for Glory 5. Chris Brayman didn't work on 5.
I don't, this is Chris
Yes,
Brayman.
we did. Senior moment. This hotshot Hollywood musician, whose name will eventually come back to me, who did Quest for Glory 5 music. Chance Thomas. Anyway, Chance was amazing, but he did all the themes and song for Quest for Glory 5, and listeners have said that's really nice, but our audience
wants to hear Mark's original theme.
Yes.
And eventually came back and incorporated that into the theme song for Quest for Glory 5 and beat him ahead after that.
It really needed
Because that was iconic. It was amazing too.
Yes, Quest for Glory 5 was done after we had been fired from Sierra, and Sierra had broken up and had gone up north, but we had one little division left in Oakhurst, where the original group was, and they had no big project coming up, franchises, except they could get Quest for Glory. So they brought me back in originally, because Corey was working elsewhere. And so I worked on it, and they wanted an adventure role-playing game, and I started incorporating it more and more into a Quest for Glory game. The Quest for Glory game I had wanted to make, because it was a series. I wanted to write a final game of the series and bring everything back together again. So of course it had to have Siebert's music to it, but then it took longer than they expected, and we weren't going to get it out the first year. So instead of just forget about this, they actually released a CD version of the music that Chance had been working with, and he didn't even have the 3 months of time to work on a game, a whole game. He had all that time to work on it, and he put in so much effort and so much that we had a meeting in Sierra, and everybody got to come to it, and we got to listen to that soundtrack. And honestly, I was in tears, and half the people were in tears because it was so great. Now we were hearing music as it was meant to be, sound, full orchestra, and it was just an emotional experience.
He did work on Quest for Glory 2. He did the Harem dance scene.
I think he also did Dagger Brown and Raw.
Okay.
And I love him.
And he did Larry 5 VGA, didn't he?
Oh,
And EcoQuest.
Ah,
There you
yes.
go. Great guys. But he didn't do Quest for Glory 5.
Hi there, Anna from the Classic Gamers Guild podcast. A question for all of you that might even have a very short answer. Since leaving Sierra, have any of you actually played an adventure game? And if so, what would be the most recent one you have played? Whose was it?
I do play a lot of games. The one that comes to mind is the Broken Sword series. I do like that series quite a bit. It's got a lot of the DNA of kind of the Sierra style to it. Also, a more recent one, just been playing fairly recently on the Switch, Thimbleweed Park. Fantastic pixel graphics, old school adventure game, super cool.
And 5 minutes count. I played about 10 minutes of the Return to Monkey Island and about 5 minutes of Thimbleweed Park. I actually played a little bit of Heroine's Quest.
We played Heroines, we played all the Quest for Glory, one of these, or at least tribute games. Because they really are very good. I mean, Heroine's Quest and Quest for Infinite, they are totally worth playing, and I really recommend them.
So it was when we played
And of course, there's all the games by, what's his name?
What's his face?
Watch my games, yeah. I've actually played one of the Spike-Well
So we really recommend that if you like Sierra games,
Come on, Val.
check out Dave Gilbert's games.
And then the other thing I want to mention too, I don't know if a lot of people know this or remember this, but Lowe remade Leisure Suit Larry back in 2013, I think.
Think so.
It was like an HD version of the original Leisure Suit Larry. It came out, it got a little bit of fanfare, and it kind of just seemed to, people, I don't know, was it marketed, or how did that experience go?
How much time do you have?
Hopefully it's a positive.
Get us all the non-actionable.
Yeah, I had a producer come to me and say, if I could get the rights to Larry away from whatever European conglomerate had bought them up, Codemasters, but because EA when they EA didn't want it because the last Larry game that somebody in bumfuck Utah wrote that it was terrible, and they didn't want to market it, so they sold the rights off. And but it's a long, ugly story. Anyway, all the Sierra rights went to one company, but except for Larry, and Larry got shuttled off because they didn't want to be associated with Larry. So this producer said, if I get the rights, would you do a game? And I said, only if Josh would do all the work. And he said, sure, I can talk him into that. So anyway, we did a remake, and we were one of the first Kickstarter games. We came along early on, and I was proud of us. We finished a product in a year. And actually got the game out, got all the awards out, got everything out, and then when we started selling copies, the producer said, you know, I'm not going to pay you guys because I like all the money. And yeah, so he stiffed the company that did all the animation programming, threatened to sue me for not being ugly enough. What was it?
I can't remember. You didn't want to do the next one.
Oh, that's right. You wanted me to do a sequel. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Anyway, and he skipped you too, right? Oh yeah. And all of us, and then things didn't go his way, and so that the story was a great project. And it was fun working together and working with the people that we did, and we did I think a good game. I think it's a good product. Except then it just had this terrible taste in your mouth. You know that when you were done, you didn't want to have anything to do with this guy, and that's what I've done ever since. So for the past 12 years, I've stayed away from the gaming industry. Other than I enjoy coming to these shows and having people go, God, you're old.
I remember the time people were saying they don't want to buy a game about a sex pervert from a real sex pervert.
And not me. He doesn't mean me. He's talking about Paul.
Watch it.
Year of adventure games on Kickstarter, starting out with Broken Age, and then Sierra people got in line, so we had these Larry Reloaded, and we eventually got in there with Hero U, and then Jane Jensen was in there.
Yeah.
And Space Venture.
I don't realize that the original Game Night was remade in HD file as well.
Yeah, so Al and Josh were the only ones that got it done in a reasonable amount of time. We budgeted and scheduled hours to be done in a year, and it took us 5.5 years.
Any questions for the guy to be?
Okay, we're gonna do some, let's start way back here. Anybody in the cheap seats? Anyone? All the way back to the cheap seats. Okay, you sit back here so you don't get any attention focused on you. So.
Whispers.
How many Quest for Glory games were you expecting to make during your time here? Just 4.
There were going to be 4.
Originally.
How many King's Quests?
The Quest for Glory 3 was an anomaly. Our co-worker, Ellen Guan Beeman, said, oh, I know what Quest for Glory 3 is going to be. And she rattled off exactly what it was going to be. And we said, oh, yeah, that's it exactly.
Right. And then we made.
And so we made that game. So 4 turned into 5. And we talked about making some expansion packs to Quest for Glory 5, and that was right at the time that Sarah collapsed and
Well, our division totally
went away.
Awesome. So I had one more up in here somewhere. Raise your hand. Okay.
And we're playing
Hey guys, just wondering what your favorite Quest for Glory game was out of the series, and your fondest memories, and why that one in particular is your favorite.
It's Quest for Glory Day.
I'm currently wearing my 30 Years of Glory shirt, and this is the 30th anniversary of Quest for Glory 4, Shadows of Darkness, and that was the worst disaster of the series. It was released as a completely unplayable game that crashed constantly, but we managed amazingly. Told Sierra management, this is bad for Sierra, you can't leave it like this. And we actually talked them into remaking it a year later with with amazing CD-ROM voices, amazing John Rhys Davis is the narrator, Gimli, and just unbelievable. And that became a favorite, and most fans' favorites.
Yeah, we have a live stream every Sunday that we're around, so to speak, or every other Sunday.
Not this Sunday.
But we do, we're live playing Quest for Glory 4 right now. And we're doing Shadows of Darkness, and it really is probably our favorite of the whole series.
And that is twitch.tv/transsolargames.
Everybody get that? Everybody gonna watch that now every weekend? Say yes.
Woo! Hell yeah!
2 o'clock Pacific time.
Raise your hand, I'll people behind you.
Hello. This is primarily a question for Mark, but if any of you can chime in, I'd love it. My favorite Sierra story is the guerrilla marketing that you did for King's Quest 6 with the credits music. I'm so curious what you think about that. Was that your idea? Did you feel embarrassed about it? I want to know what you think, because that's my favorite Sierra story.
So we're talking about Girl in the Tower, which ended up being Girl in the Shower later. Yeah, so my idea was we had been going to the movies and we've been seeing the top 40 song at the end of the movie. And so that was the extent of my idea. It was like, hey, at the end of King's Quest, let's do the movie top 40 song, and it'll be all about Girl in the Tower. It's kind of based on themes from King's Quest 5. And then I had Debbie, my wife, sing on it, and I had some of the guys that were in a band that I used to be in, and we had toured a lot of the United States in the early 80s. So I got to bring them in the studio, and it was like a really fun thing to do. And that was the extent of my idea, and when I brought it in and played it for the, Ken and the rest of the staff, they were like, hey, well, let's get this on the radio. And I was going like, well, okay. I said, well, how about we send it out to the radio stations and then start a campaign for people to call in? I was going like, well, when I was in college, I worked at a radio station, and I don't think the program manager is going to like that. And I was quickly dismissed, and off they went. And so, but I will say that I still get some BMI royalties from that song. So in a strange sort of way, I'm kind of like, okay, well, thanks.
What do you mean by royalties?
I mean a crown.
I tell everybody, if you want to play my games, go to Good Old Games, and they will charge you a pittance and send me nothing. I also have a page on my website for you to pay penance if you stole the games in the 90s. And you feel guilty now that you got money, and so I have a donations page where people buy me a cup of coffee.
So next question.
Hi. My question is for Josh. So you obviously you're the iconic voice of King Graham. Can you talk a little bit about the changeover from the really early voice acting of King's Quest 5 to the Hollywood leap to King's Quest 6, and what that transition was like? 'Cause I know you were in both games.
I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know. I mean, I loved it when the designers would find people in the company who wanted to do the voices, and we had a lot of people at the company who were big into theater. There was a theater in Oakhurst where a lot of them performed, and if it hadn't been for the employees, Bruce would never have met his wife. But when they started moving to Hollywood talent, that was a great sign, because it meant that the budgets were going up. And who could argue with wanting to use professional voice talent? Lucas had been using professional voice talent from their very first voice game, and we didn't have that luxury. But I saw it as a very positive move. I was all for it, even though it put me out of a job.
Well, I'll add something real quick to that, speaking of voice acting. When they got into doing things like full motion and especially Shippers 2, you say they use professional talent, but a lot of times they use tech support. And I know that because if you played Shippers 2, Jason was the lead guitarist for Trip Cyclone. His character
had no extra pay.
No. We wanted the hell off the phones, is what we wanted. So he did the character, and then I did a voiceover that turned out to be his voice on the answering machine in Shippers 2.
All for free on the weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. This happened all through. If you watch Phantasm 2 or any of these others, a bunch of those were all tech support people that were just basically tired of answering all y'all's questions.
Any idea that Ken and Roberta were cheap, or specifically Ken? It's true.
Job isn't cheap.
So first I want to say, Mark Siebert, thank you for Arana's piece. That is just a treasure of and then I had a question for the Coles. Thank you for Quest for Glory. I love that series. That is my childhood, so thank you for that. What was the impact, or can you talk about the experience when you had to change the name from Heroes Quest to Quest for Glory? Was that nothing, or was that a significant deal?
Yeah, we had a brief hiatus between Quest for Glory 1 and Quest for Glory 2, and no, there was a brief break where we were doing something else in the meantime, and they decided that we were losing the rights to Heroes Quest because, well, you could tell details of that loss.
Oh, I thought everybody knew it by now. Games Workshop in England and UK had a word game series called Advanced Hero Quest. And they had licensed that out to some independent company to do a video game of some kind. It could be an Amiga or Atari. That was to Advanced Hero Quest. They said, oh, you can't make a game called Heroes Quest because we own the rights to that. I said, well, wait a second, our game released before yours. But apparently by UK law, they were able to register the name before they made their game. On US law, you have to have a big name before you can register it. So they basically stole the title from us. But admittedly, their board game preceded us.
So yes, not only did we lose the name, we couldn't refer back to the name.
Yeah, we couldn't say formerly Heroes Quest. So we really lost a lot of marketing momentum. And Quest for Glory 2 did not sell very well. I think a lot of people said, Quest for Glory 2? I've never heard of, what was Quest for Glory 1? You know, yeah, you get over it. We had a kind of a contest in-house to pick a new name for it, and we sort of stuffed the ballot boxes by whispering to our friends, hey, put Quest for Glory as the name.
We did like the name, but it just wasn't the iconic Heroes Quest name that we wanted that fit in so well with all of the other Sierra games. But, you know, win some, lose some, we lost.
Yeah, so the problem is the whole theme of the thing was being a hero. So you weren't out for glory, you weren't out to become famous. You were out to be a hero and do heroic things. So Heroes Quest is the better title, but yeah, pretty used to Quest for Glory by now.
So we have time for just a couple more questions?
Yeah, maybe one or two more.
Okay.
So I'm gonna get one back here. I'm gonna work the other side this time, and then. Okay, you gave me a really painful face. You can do this one.
Thank you, I appreciate that. So in my youth, I played a lot of your games, and I just want to say thank you so much for changing my life at that time. It really introduced me to computers, and it led me into like my career path that I have now. I wanted to be in computers because of the work that you did, so thank you. There were games that I played, like the Manhunter series, where Manhunter 2 just never, had some things at the end that led into Manhunter 3, and that game never happened. So I was just wondering, right, are there any games that you guys worked on that never made it, that you were a little bit disappointed it never made it, or you're forced to do it, and you're like, thank God it didn't come out? Anything like that?
You should suit Larry 4.
Yeah. Well, my dad wouldn't let me buy any of your games when I was younger, so now I get to enjoy them. So thank you.
Good question.
I like to tell people that if we had known when we were working on these games that people would still be playing and talking about them 3 decades on, you would have worked harder on them.
Well, Lowe and I came up with all sorts of proposals for games. When we did Shannon for Legend Entertainment, that started out off games coming to us and say, why don't you give me a 10, one paragraph game ideas, and we came up with 10 some were 2 or 3 page proposals. And he said, oh yeah, those are really good. I guess you know how to propose a game, and then here's the license, we're gonna have you do it instead. One of ours, I remember we proposed to Sierra was this Weird West game that was going to be in the Old West with fantasy elements and so on. Something else ended up making a game in the West instead, comedy Western.
Yeah, Freddie Farkas.
You can get one more?
Yep.
And pick one up front.
Thank you. Now I'm on the spot. This one's for Josh. Hi, Josh. Hi. So you've probably written for more Sierra games than anyone else at the company, like ghost written a bunch of stuff. What's your...
Are you blowing smoke up my ass? We're doing
That's later in the hallway. Sorry, I'm not going to mention that in public, but okay.
What happens in Portland stays in Portland.
So what's your favorite joke you wrote for a game that you didn't design and wasn't technically the writer on, that somebody else ended up taking credit for? Ooh. And is it in Freddie Farkas?
Are you trying to get me in trouble? Wow, I'm gonna have to think about that. I don't think I've ever been in a situation where I resented a designer for taking credit for something that I might have written under their name. There are lines here and there that I love, but I guess my favorite is new. I watched One Short Eyes playthrough of Daggerbaum and Raw, and there was this little character named Tubby sitting by the sidewalk, and if you talk to him, he doesn't want to talk about anything. He says, my parents tell me I'm not supposed to talk about blank. And at the very end of his dialogue, Laura Lowe says to him, your parents are very restrictive, aren't they? And he says, I asked my parents that, and they said no. So Bruce probably gets most of the credit for that, but I voiced Tubby and I wrote all the dialogue, and I'm proud of it, and I have absolutely no grudge against Bruce or Hal or Roberta
Or us, because you were in our game, and we did the writing for our game too, Road to Redemption.
Right, yeah, I mean, it's just an honor to work on these games. I mean, I have absolutely not a single bitter bone in my body, unlike a lot of people who don't work for Sierra.
Josh burned out entirely and left social media for about a year after the exciting Lindsey experience with certain producer. And I saw him come back on. Nobody came back on to Facebook and said, "Hey, Josh, would you consider writing for another game?"
I remember when you played Larry Reloaded, and you said to me, "I'm just going to say one thing: you can have too much of a good thing."
Well, actually, I'm going to expand on that a little bit, if you guys don't mind. I really like this question. To kind of go down the panel, when you think about the fun of the comedy and the jokes that you've done, what's the one joke or bit that you always think about as your favorite or one of your favorites in the games you've done? I mean, you kind of touched on it a little bit. Anytime, I know, Al, you got it. Yeah. But just a happy moment you think about as far as a good laugh you got working on or the big you put into a game.
Yeah.
Let's go down the line.
As Trolls knows, I love to laugh at my own jokes. But I think the opening and closing ballads of Freddie Farkas are my most.
I just finished that game recently. Yay! Al, or should we wait till the end because it would be in for a couple hours?
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Mark, go ahead. Okay.
I didn't do any of the writing, so I enjoyed the jokes. But I'm going to say more than enjoying the jokes, I enjoyed people and the camaraderie and just being able to be a part of something that was very special.
It's all about the team. I'm most famous for writing these Quest for Glory games. I didn't actually write, because I did maybe 5% of them, and Glory did about 90. No, Glory did about 80%, and the other 15 was team members. So some of the things we're most famous for were actually written by other people. The fact that Quest for Glory is full of ponds is all Robert Fishbach, our programmer on Heroes Quest, who was the first person to put a pond into the game. And we looked around and looked at Bob and said, "Well, are there puns in the games?" But yes, my immortal dialogue, of course, is the Meeps saying, "Hiya, pleased to meet ya," which is not funny at all, but that's most of what I wrote.
It doesn't have to be funny, it just has to be the one you like.
Of course, I loved writing dialogue. I love the characters we had in our games, from Erasmus and Fenris and their silly, stupid jokes that I make up there, to in Quest for Glory 5, we had a character named Wolfie, who was a doggy character who spoke just like the gentleman in movie Short Circuit, which would always have these wonderful misappropriated words and things like that, and it was so much fun to write. So actually, I don't have one joke, but I have a cast of characters that I adore.
The funniest joke that everyone comments on is the dialogue that doesn't match the written dialogue in
the ones I didn't write.
The ones that we didn't write, that were the actors ad-libbing on it. And we decided to leave those in as they spoke, even though it did not match.
Stinky townspeople.
But Erasmus and Fenris, I'm Erasmus, and Laurie is Fenris. So really, that's the kind of conversations we have about that's what the game is based on.
All right.
Mr. Lowe?
I think my favorite line was in Larry 1. There was a sign over the hooker's bed that you had to actually look at to read. It wasn't obvious, but the sign read, "Substantial penalty for early withdrawal."
All right, before we let you go here, I want to let you guys know, you guys are all big adventure game fans, and there is a free concert tomorrow night that's going to be playing a bunch of music. Right there, right? You're part of this? So they're going to be playing music from Seventh Guest, Gabriel Knight, Space Quest, King's Quest, and more. If you have your badge, you get to go into this for free. So,
And the name of the band is?
Air 47. Perfect for Sierra fans, right?
Yes.
So that's tomorrow night. So there's little flyers here.
If you know that reference, you worked in tech support.
Yeah. So, guys, thank you so much for coming and giving these guys love.